What's up, guys? Hopefully your day is going well so far. Let's cut straight to the chase. The topic of saving and loading is very important in Undertale, and I believe that is going to be equally important in Deltarune, and I have a plethora of evidence for that you've probably seen tossed around that I want to kind of compile into one concise video. So that's today's topic. Before we get into that, if you are of the 90% that watches my videos but hasn't subscribed yet, why not drop a sub? I'm trying to grow and reach a bigger audience, and I would really appreciate it if you guys could help me out. So thank you. So, let's start off with this. What do we already know about saving and loading? And since these properties are different between Undertale and Deltarune, I'll kind of break it up into two sections. Firstly, the things we know from Undertale. So, first off, saving and loading is an ability that's given to the being that has the most determination in the underground. I think the implication is that it only applies to the underground, which is weird because obviously there's an overworld too, so not really sure what happens up there. But originally this property, this ability is given to Flowey until Frisk comes along and kind of usurps that power away, which is why we're able to save and load in Undertale, until Flowey takes the ability back after stealing the 6 human souls that Asdor has. And we also know that some beings can retain knowledge across timelines. Well, at least Flowey can, which is interesting because we also know, as I say at the bottom point here, that Flowey knows the things that we've done across timelines, but Sans, who you might also kind of cite as an example, has knowledge of timelines, but doesn't directly have the ability to retain knowledge of what happens across the timelines. He implies that he only knows what has happened previously based on your facial expressions. So, that's certainly an impressive feat, but it's not the same as Flowey just actually just knowing and seemingly keeping the knowledge across resets and saves and stuff, or at least not resets, just across timelines. And I think this is a sign that maybe Flowey can only do this, can only keep the knowledge because he's had the ability in the past, so he kind of just has this leftover ability to keep knowing what happens. That's my theory on that. A small sub-theory there. But we also know that in Undertale, there's only one save file, which means that throughout every save, the elements of the world are always the same. So this is important because it's not the case in Deltarune for both of those points. And the save slot is initially empty, and then we save over it when we begin playing the game. So there's that, which all three of those points at the very top are things that are different than Deltarune. So those are the 3 most important things, I'd say. And then there's also the 4th point, which is that the game acknowledges us not saving. So there's some points of dialogue towards the climax of the game that tell us, hey, you didn't save, essentially. Sans tells us that in the phone call at the end, and some dialogue changes in the Azrael fight if you don't save. So the game has a mechanic of acknowledging that you didn't save throughout the entire game. I guess to kind of reward or benefit challenge runners who make it the whole way without saving. So that's also something of note that will apply later. But from Deltarune, there's a number of things that are interesting that are different from Undertale. We don't have too much information, not nearly as much as Undertale because it's not a finished game, obviously. But there's enough here to give us some hints about where it's going to go, I think. So we can only save currently in the Dark World. Now I say currently because Toby has told us that he is going to implement, or has implemented, a mechanic to save in the Light World, even though he was seemingly hesitant to at first, probably for lore reasons. He didn't want us to be able to save in the Light World, so he's probably going to have some kind of object that allows us to save the game in a non-canon kind of way, I assume. So I don't expect to see a Undertale-style save point in the Light World, because that would certainly have some implications on the story, I assume, considering how important that mechanic is in Undertale. But we also see something very interesting here, which is that in Undertale, the save file was empty. But in Deltarune, the save file is not empty. In fact, it's Kris's save file. So we save over Kris's save file during our first time saving in the Dark World, which has implications about Kris. For example, if they have a save file in the Dark World, then have they been there before, for example? Though the time also says 0 minutes and 0 seconds, so once again, maybe not as deep as I'm making it sound, but it is certainly interesting that we kind of usurp the save file from Kris. And then furthermore, something interesting is that Gaster is the one who, well, I'll say Gaster in quotes, I guess, since technically not confirmed, but it's Gaster, alright, it's Gaster. Gaster helps us manipulate these save files in the menu. So in Chapter 1, I'll go ahead and add in Chapter 1 here, because in Chapter 2, or after you beat Chapter 1 at least, the save file, like, select screen changes from being this, like, green Matrix-style interface to being a place that plays before the story as the song in the background and has the fountain and it's cool and it's blue and it's really pretty and stuff. So, at least prior to Chapter 2, or beating Chapter 1, we can kind of hear Gaster talking to us, and he says some interesting things depending on what we choose to do on the save files. So if we choose to copy a save file to itself, he says it is immune to its own image, for example. Or if we try to copy an empty save file, he says it is barren and cannot be copied. So he uses this kind of, like, very high-level, verbose Gaster talk to talk about the mechanics of saving and copying and deleting save files. And that's very interesting. It's kind of like a device theory thing, where it's like, obviously Gaster has this kind of, I mentioned it in the last video too, this kind of, like, meta ability, this kind of layer above the world of Deltarune, especially since he's kind of what connects us in our world to the Deltarune world, right? And so he is the kind of the guide who helps us operate in the save file menu, which is very, very interesting, as some would say. And the real crux of the video here is that there's only one difference between all three save files. And it's really kind of seemingly arbitrary so far. And I'll talk about it more in a minute, but it's about some flavor text on Azriel's drawer in Kris's room. That's the only thing that changes. And for now, of course. And I think that it has some possible implications, some that I like and some that I don't, some that I believe more than others. So what does it all mean? Well, let's get right into that. With Theory 1, the obvious, that we are saving over Kris's save file as kind of a visual meta representation of us taking over their life. So I think that this is the most baseline, the least crackhead thing. Like, it's really kind of just obvious, I think, that Toby wants us to see Kris's save file, because no matter if we save for the first time in Chapter 1 or Chapter 2, and I presume in future chapters as well, it'll always say Kris. So if we start on Chapter 2, as in we don't play Chapter 1 and we just, like, immediately start Chapter 2, the save file will still say Kris until we copy over it or save over it. Now, does that mean that in this timeline, the events of Chapter 2 happened without our control? Well, I would say no, probably not. I think that that's just a way of Toby ensuring that we as the player see us copy over or save over Kris's save file, so that we know, like, hey, we're doing this thing that seems a little bit intrusive, you know, like, that we really shouldn't feel good about doing, taking control of this character. So that's kind of the obvious theory here. Now, here's an idea that comes courtesy of Half-Bred Chaos's video, and because their video on the topic of Kris's save file, more exactly, less so the 3 save files and more just the fact that Kris has one, is spectacular. And they kind of suggest maybe Kris can save in the light world, because there is, in the light world, there's the Undertale UI, right? Because in the dark world, we get a more fleshed out, normal kind of fantasy RPG UI that has, like, armor for the various party members, that kind of stuff. In Deltarune, in the Light World, I mean, we get the same menu as Undertale. That's very interesting as well. But there's also seemingly an unused mechanic, or like some stuff that's in the save files or in the game's code rather, as a placeholder perhaps, that allows us to, if we use it in like a debug or something like that, allows us to save in the Light World. And if we do that, the save file will always read Kris. It isn't possible to save over Kris's save file in the Light World. And also, we can't save in the Light World normally as the player. We can only save in the Dark World. Now this is, once again, this is all subject to change in future chapters, especially if we get to a point where in Chapter 4, the save point that Toby adds, it behaves a certain kind of way. I think it's likely that the game, like, kind of, this is by a commenter, I forgot who it was, but the game kind of like auto-saves, or like prompts you to save through some event happening, instead of it like explicitly, like, you have to walk up to a point and interact with it and choose to save. Then it feels a bit less like it's breaking the kind of lore here that we're trying to establish. So, we talked about how the being that has the highest determination is able to save in Undertale. What if we're only able to save in the Dark World because for some reason we have more power in the Dark World than in the Light World? Now, we see a potential for this through the fact that, well, for starters, in the Dark World, we're kind of playing this game. That the Dark World is a parallel to entertainment, right? And that means that maybe we, as the player, have more control, potentially, for that reason, because we're playing a game, like, literally, in the game. We're also this idea that since the player is kind of, like, able to control Noelle in Chapter 2, that maybe that is a sign that we have more power. Because obviously we don't spend much time in the Light World, so there's nothing that says that we can't control Noelle, for example, in the Light World. But the fact that it's in a Dark World, I think, is kind of why we're able to, because she believes that she's having a dream. That she's, that's not real. So the player kind of can take advantage of this realm of fiction in the universe of Deltarune to have more power than Kris. But what if in the Light World, Kris is able to, for example, take out the soul, and they can save. Perhaps they save between chapters in the Light World, for example, something that Half-Breed mentions in their video. So, I think there's a strong possibility that we get some future information on this, because of the fact that it'd be very interesting if there was like a difference in who had the highest level of determination or power between the Dark World and the Light World. It would make the tension between the player and Kris even greater, I would say. So yeah, I hope that happens. This is a very good theory that I am very interested in. Theory 3 is that Chapter 3 will be the thing that's most affected by this, because of the fact that the only thing that changes between the 3 save files is the flavor text in Kris's room. So now we're moving away from Kris having their own save file to the fact that there's 3 save files. And here I include the aforementioned flavor text changes. We have, in file 1, it has a school cross-country shirt that has a tear in it. In Chapter 2, we get an embarrassing haircut on an ID, and who I assume is Azriel as well. And the cross-country shirt is probably also Azriel's. And then we have a coupon book. Every coupon is for half off a large pizza. So, these are these 3 items that are in this drawer by Azriel's bed. And this is the only thing that changes. The only detail that changes across all 3 save files. And people suggest that maybe since the Chapter 3 Dark World is in the Dreamer household, that there will be some kind of major or minor change that depends on the save file. Some will even suggest that the secret boss depends on the save file. Now, I don't think it's going to go that far. I don't expect the secret boss to change, though it would be interesting because these seem to be abandoned items, and all of them I could see having some kind of potential interesting dynamic, especially the middle one with a picture of Azrael when he was younger with an embarrassing haircut. That'd be a very interesting character to have, especially on a chapter that seemingly is going to focus on the kind of dreamer family dynamic with Toriel and Kris and Rousey being there, and potentially Asdor if you believe that theory as well. So I'd be interested to see what these things could potentially transform into in the Dark World, because having them here, it could just be like a red herring or a bit that Toby has, but it really feels like this would be a great chance to take advantage of this detail. Have it be, even if it's just minor, if it's like a background character, or like some like maybe like one line of flavor text changes in the Dark World, based on the save files. Either way, it could be just kind of funny to watch it pay off. I don't think it's going to be as extreme of a payoff as a secret boss changing, for example, though these are seemingly abandoned items. That would be kind of interesting to see as a secret boss, because those are items that have been thrown away typically. And they're also caged inside of the drawer, so there's also that kind of implication of freedom as well. So that's that theory about how the save files could change things in Chapter 3. I think that it's likely, but not to an extreme. I'll put it that way. Theory 4. This one is not happening, and it kind of sucks. So, Theory 4 is that we need to beat the game 3 times in order to get the true ending or whatever, which, once again, Toby said only one ending. I think that there's going to be a thing where, like, the ending is not the important thing, is how how we get there and how we impact those around us. It's like the journey matters more kind of message, right? And this kind of goes against that by saying that in order to get a true ending, we need to get the game on every save file. I don't like this idea at all. Sounds tedious, sounds stupid. Kind of goes against what Toby said. So I'm going to say no on this one. But if I'm wrong, then I guess I'm wrong, though I'm pretty certain that he's not going to have us beat the game 3 times. Now, an alternative thing is that I think that an alternative to the one ending thing is that we end up kind of getting soft-locked in the weird route, trying to break the game, trying to see more, trying to break out of the bounds that Toby has already instilled in our head just through the game page and the Steam page by saying only one ending. As soon as an Undertale fan sees only one ending, they're going to do all in their power to try to change that, especially when the game already kind of gives us these choices regardless. So, kind of a genius way that Toby, like, gets into our head at the very start, even, like, before playing the game. And I could see the Snowdrave / Weird Route kind of being us trying to break out of that, and then the game just not having an ending. Doesn't pay off, right? Because we know that Noelle can do soft locks in the games that she plays, like Dragon Blazers, for example. What if Deltarune just stops? That's kind of the alternative, right? But yeah, I'm not a big fan of this idea, personally. Now, an idea that I am a pretty big fan of is this one. Theory 5. We're going to need Gaster's help. So, since Gaster helps us manage the save files, maybe we'll need to use all 3 save files in order to beat the game, in order to get an ending. Maybe not like a different ending or a true ending, but maybe just the ending in general. And this idea kind of comes from this concept. I think this is maybe like, I forgot where this came from, maybe like the Devil's Heaven theory, or was that a theory about him being a bad guy? I don't remember. I've seen a theory somewhere that Gaster's actually a good guy, not a bad guy, which I agree with. I think it'd be kind of cheesy for him to be a bad guy. He could be very ominous, this kind of like eldritch being, could be horrifying. I hope that he's like just kind of like a goofy, misunderstood, quirky, like scientist dude. That'd be a lot more interesting in my case, I think. But the idea is that Gaster is actually a good guy, not a bad guy, and that through these save files and us being in his experiment, him linking us to Deltarune, all this that he's doing, the Dark World, all that we are trying to help him in some way. Maybe, like I mentioned in the last theory, we're trying to help him save his Undertale counterpart that's like shattered across time and space, or whatnot. And that we are mutually benefiting because he helps us with the save files, he allows us to play the game, he allows us to beat the game through this, and that we are doing something through these save files that helps him learn about his condition or his counterpart's condition, or allows us to like restore him to being whole again. And one thing that I find fascinating about this is that there's a commenter on a previous video who mentioned, I don't remember who it was. I'm sorry, because I'll shout you out in the description in the comments below, because I am just now thinking of this. But there's a commenter that mentioned that in Homestuck, which obviously Deltarune is very inspired by, there is this kind of concept of the god, the holy being of this verse being a negative force. And we know that the angel, who is potentially the player, maybe not, that's a different theory for a different day, is seen as kind of a negative force that needs to be stopped in the verse of Deltarune. What if, also since Gaster is seen as this kind of demonic devil kind of entity, with his association to the number 6 especially, what if this is setting up a similar plotline to like Homestuck or to Persona 5 or Has-Been Hotel, for example, in which the forces that are to be considered good, that we are aligned with, are the kind of devil side of Gaster, and that we, through his help, are taking on the angel, banishing the angel's heaven, right? So, I really do think it'd be interesting if we have to use these save files as a means of us cooperating with Gaster. Maybe we meet Gaster's like physical form in the Deltarune light world, or wherever he is, like in the bunker, for example, and he tells us, the player, like, hey, you should use the save files to do this, and then we back out of the game into the menu and use the save files to help him help us, essentially. That'd be a really cool kind of twist that makes the game more meta. Feels kind of like one shot at that point, where like we have to like take a step back into a different layer and then go back in order to solve a puzzle, for example. This could be a very cool idea. I kind of hope this happens, honestly. I would like to see this kind of cooperation between us and Gaster, who are both obviously somewhat on a layer above the light world, for example, and seeing us work together to take on this powerful being of the angel. So that is my top 5 theories on this topic, especially the previous one, that I think is going to be pretty exciting to see if it happens in the future coming chapters of Deltarune. Now, let's wrap it up with the Discord. Has over 100 members right now, so if you want to hop on that bandwagon, now is your chance. We're growing fast. The Discord is called the Fruit Basket, and it has the link for the Discord is in the description of every video and on the channel homepage, so check it out. And thanks for watching the video. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, you must like the video, so why not like the video? Shout out to Rosie Pixels for supporting the channel on Ko-Fi. And with that in mind, I love you guys. Be safe, be smart, don't be stupid, and have a great rest of your day.